Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the most recent Pokemon games, and as such, I've played them quite a bit lately. But the Pokemon series has 25 years of games to play, so let's travel back in time. Like, not literally, but, you know, let's play an older game today. So my friend Heltrix hit me up and asked me to do a Soul Link Nuzlocke with him. Do I smell content? He just handed me this on a silver platter. Funnily enough, this was before he even knew I was doing this whole Pokemon channel thing. So of course I accepted, but there was just one problem. Heltrix is Australian, meaning coordinating time to do this was painful, so much so it took us nearly a whole month before we actually started our attempts. But we finally booted up our Pokemon Platinum and got to work. But what is a Soul Link Nuzlocke? It's a variant of the Nuzlocke challenge, in which you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter on each route or town, and if that Pokemon faints in battle, it dies and you can never use it again. If you run out of Pokemon or lose a battle, you fail the challenge. And Soul Link is a two-player version, where each Pokemon you get, your partner has a counterpart to, and if either one of them dies, they are both dead. We rush out to get our starters from the briefcase, and what's this? That's not a Turtwig. So yeah, we also randomized the game as well. We kept it fairly tame, randomizing the wild Pokemon, Pokemon abilities, and the Pokemon of the trainers we had to battle. For our starters, my choices were Trico, Magcargo, and Pikachu, while Heltrix had Magby, Roselia, and Lickitung. But it's not as simple as both of us choosing our best Pokemon here. A common rule when you do a Soul Link Nuzlocke is a typing challenge, where you can't use Pokemon of the same typing on your team. So if I want to pick Trico, that means Heltrix can't pick Roselia. And if he wants Magby, then I can't choose Magcargo. And to make these rules slightly more forgiving, we just did this with the Pokemon's first listed type. So take a Salamence, for example, who is Dragon Flying, then we can only use a Dragon if it's the second type listed on that Pokemon, such as with Flygon being a Ground Dragon. So I took Trico and he took Magby, and we were off to the races, feeling good and confident that surely we were going to beat this challenge on the first try. Alpharad? Psh. Pokemon challenges? Psh. Step aside, make way for Trails and Heltrix. Wait, I lost already? So, yeah. Trico was the Turtwig option and Magcargo was the Chimchar option. So the rival picked the Chimchar option. Take two. This time, I get Swalot, Abra, and Octillery, and Heltrix gets Shelder, Kakuna, and Diglett. Here, choosing Swalot and Shelder was our best course of action. It left our rival with the worst Pokemon, Abra not being able to attack, and Kakuna not being able to attack. So it was perfect, except there was one issue with Shelder.
Please. Oh, fuck me.
So yeah, Drought Shelder is pretty terrible, but we made it through the first Pokemon, so we'd be able to move on to get our first wild encounter. Here we got a team of Golbat and Wartortle, becoming Warbat, but this is still kind of bad, because Heltrix can't use both of his Pokemon at the same time because they are both water type, which is sad because they oddly had some synergy together.
What's this?
Wait, that's so synergetic though. Drought plus Flower Gift is a crazy ability combo to get. Just, you know, not on two Pokemon of the same type, and especially water types. My Golbat also actually had Drought though, so that combo was pretty hilarious. And the bad luck for Heltrix would continue, as for our lake encounter, he got yet another water type. And then we got Weegapee, who was a poison type. Then our next encounter, we got Zigzagoon and Rapidash, and he would finally get lucky as we got Butterfree Moltres with a fishing encounter. However, legendaries are actually kinda bad to get encounters for a lot of the time, because their catch rates, meaning the chance you have to catch them, are awful. Especially when you're in the early game, when you only have regular Pokeballs at your disposal unless you found a randomized item that happened to be a better Pokeball. So Heltrix sat there trying all of his Pokeballs, but wasn't able to get it. That's a legendary fail, number 1. And after our first rival fight and catching Staryu Breloom, we sat down to figure out what Pokemon we could even actually use. And we realized we could only even really use one Pokemon right now, because I got several normal types and he got several water types. Stantler Wailmer was our best option for now, but we were also playing with a level cap, and Wailmer was already pretty close to it, so we couldn't really use it right now. So for now, we had to use Warbat. But as you might expect, only having one Pokemon makes it really difficult to get out of a bad situation. And my world was about to be rocked by Lass Caitlin. Oh wait, this is a trainer? She moves. She has 4 Pokemon! I probably would have made it out of that battle alive, but I got smoke screened by her first Pokemon, which led to enough misses, and I just couldn't even deal damage to her Hoothoot. And remember, that means I lost the battle, and this challenge was over. I like to imagine when this happens to your character, they were overwhelmed with depression at the thought of losing a battle, such that she never wanted to do a Pokemon battle ever again. But you know, that run had trash RNG anyway, so take 3. Heltrix got some bad starter RNG on this one, as every one of his choices, his rival had a good matchup against it. And of course, this had to be on the run where I got an Articuno as my starter. We could have had a legendary, but no, Heltrix had to lose to a Rhydon. Take 4. Take 4 was another quality attempt. We took a pairing of Swablu and Metagross against our rivals Venonat and Zigzagoon, and our abilities were amazing. Swablu had Speed Boost and Metagross had Unburden. Metablu was truly a god tier combo. Then we picked up Giraffeon, who we couldn't use because of Swablu, but then Duskchan and Stardude. It was too good to be true. We already had 3 usable Pokemon. As we took on our first few trainers with him, Heltrix would then get some real freaky RNG. The 3 trainers on Route 202 had their Pokemon randomized to Walrein, Spheal, and Walrein. There are 493 Pokemon. The odds of that happening are extremely low, even lower than finding a legendary as your encounter.
Oh my god.
Oopsie.
But again, getting legendary encounters kinda sucks because their catch rates are bad. But the prospect of having it on the team was just too good to pass up, and I was running out of Pokeballs and I had to make some risky plays. So not only did we lose Stardude, but I didn't catch it, and we went for our next encounter only for me to get a Snorlax. Wouldn't have been able to use it anyway, but I wasn't able to catch it with only having 2 Pokeball. The rival fight would give me enough money for our next encounter, sand him, and the one after that we got some freaky RNG again.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Rotom. Okay, that's actually your best case scenario. It's the highest catch rate.
Are you fucking
Oh
serious?
my god.
Getting this combo would have been certifiably crazy, but catch rates suck. So that was wild legendary fail number 3. And I accidentally stopped recording for a bit at this point, but we only really missed out on getting a Shove It and Swallow encounter that Heltrix ran out of balls for. And I started recording just in time to have this happen. Oh, God. Another Heatran. Wait. It has Shadow Tag.
Oh my god.
Shadow Tag Heatran when I'm leading with a bug type, and it only knows Tackle, so predictably Sandhim dies here. And this means we're just left with Metablu and a Duskchan for our first fight with a gym leader. Heltrix gets a Politoed and I get a Haunter. Politoed used Perish Song and Haunter used Curse. Fantastic tandem of moves there. I had to switch my Swablu out into a Flaffy who hands me a Thunder Shock. Surprised it didn't do more damage though, and it did end up being the correct play. I switch back to Duskchan and unfortunately, the next turn, I get paralyzed before going for Revenge. Revenge is able to break through and one-shot it though, as well as the incoming Grovyle to earn me the first gym badge. But Heltrix needed to win too. His Roark had a Volbeat that it switched into for the final Perish Song turn, and it started using Double Team, getting 2 of them by the time it had half HP. Roark then used a potion, giving it +2 evasion with full health, and then it goes for a Confuse Ray. But somehow, Metablu hits through the confusion, through the Double Team, and crits. Just how lucky can you get? My god. After that, he got pretty unlucky though. He hit himself in confusion, then was put to sleep by hypnosis. Then Bubble Beam does some decent damage. He wakes up on second turn, but hits himself in confusion, and then Politoed Perish Songs again. And even without the confusion and sleep cheese, Metagross has a pretty bad matchup with Politoed. Then he switches to Duskchan, who gets crit with a Bubble Beam. And on the final turn, Politoed swaps to the final menacing Pokemon, Caterpie. He swapped back to Metagross, but it took 6 turns to take out Caterpie because he was asleep. And he finally caught a break on Politoed, getting the miss with Hypnosis twice, and finally being able to take it down. My god, that's what we had to go through to get 1 gym badge. But all that matters is that we made it out alive. After that, we went for the encounter on the route up north because we needed the money from the gym. And that granted us Mandoof, which technically we weren't actually allowed to use yet, but we kind of forgot about that detail for a while. But, you know, Swablu's a dragon type though, right? Surely. I was able to take my revenge on last Caitlyn with him, so we'll let him slide. Fast forward a bit to our next encounters. Spinarak and Growlithe was next, and on Route 205, Heltrix would find Arceus. And yes, Arceus. Be mad about it. And by the way, for those of you who make this argument, the arc phone does not force the pronunciation of Arceus or Arceus, because the letter C is practically always a hard consonant at the end of a word, where in the middle of the word it often isn't. Think forced, laced, and coerced. Coerced even has the same RCE spelling here, but not that it matters anyway, because you all know what I'm talking about when I say Arceus, and I know what you're talking about when you say Arceus or Arceus, meaning the whole argument is pointless. It's literally a whole tomato thing, a real word that people can't decide on one pronunciation for. And there are plenty of these real words that people can't agree on a one pronunciation for. So, Jesus Christ, can we stop arguing about the quote, real pronunciations of these Pokemon names? The goal of language is to understand each other, and as long as we can do that with multiple pronunciations, it doesn't matter how we say something. Sorry, it's just that y'all need to chill with these, but it's actually pronounced like this comments. So, where were we? Oh yeah, Heltrix found an Arceus, which she couldn't even attempt to catch because I got a Wigglytuff on the same encounter, and since they're both normal type, they could never be used together, so in this type of situation, we run from the Pokemon and attempt an encounter again, just like a duplicate clause. So instead, our pairing here was Wigglytuff and Grumpig. Straight to the box they went, but Heltrix would actually find another legendary on his Windworks encounter, and it was an Uxie, and it would also become the 4th failed legendary encounter of this run. After an uneventful galactic battle in Eterna Forest, we got Mightyena and Bayleaf, who had Hyper Cutter and Magic Guard. The ability RNG on this run was pretty darn good, but our RNG for the second gym leader Gardenia fight was not that good. Gardenia had Charmander, who gets the insanely busted move for Nuzlocke's Dragon Rage. On my side of things, I had to switch to Mandoof, who put the opposing Aerodactyl to sleep with Vexspore. Heltrix also switches into Mandoof, who immediately gets chunked by Dragon Rage, but Mandoof had evolved into a Bibarel by this point, meaning he now had Stab Water Gun, and he correctly guessed that he would be faster than Charmander, taking it down. But his worries were not over yet, as next up Gardenia would send out an Uxie. Thankfully, it didn't have a good move to stop Metagross with though, and the last Pokemon was Meryl, who Mighty Leaf was able to take care of, but Heltrix did have to heal Metagross with a potion in this fight, and you'll commonly see people who do these type of challenges to do no items allowed in battle. However, when it came to our healing items, the only time we could use them was in battle, because the cheat code that we were using for our rare candies had a side effect where we couldn't use any other medicine items outside of battle. And also, yes, we were using rare candies. No, it does not change the skill involved in the run, because you could just go back to Route 201 for every grinding session if you wanted to be safe, and that's boring as hell and frankly a waste of time, so cheating is objectively based. But anyway, we were able to survive the second gym, giving us access to the mansion, getting us Y-Float, who we also kind of couldn't use because we were using Mandoof, who is water type with one of them, and we shouldn't have even been using, Mandoof in the first place. But whatever, Mandoof gets a full free pass, I guess. Then we raided the Galactic building, where I accidentally put myself in a very sticky situation. You can totally avoid this being a double battle if you're smart, and I was not. And in this double battle, I'd fight a Regigigas, and I was hit with instant regret as Dusk-chan was left on 3 HP after a dizzy punch made him hit himself in confusion. I switched to Y-Float, now a Wobbuffet, and continued biting Regigigas with Mighty Leaf. And Mighty Leaf pulled out the flinch hacks right on time, keeping Regigigas frozen until taking it out. So I won that fight, but remember how Dusk-chan was on 3 HP? Well, I decided not to go to the Pokemon Center or switch who was in the front, so I sent out Dusk-chan into a battle with a Ditto. Not my smartest moment, but at least it didn't have Shadow Tag or something. But after some other stuff, it was time for the fight with Jupiter. And for Heltrix, her first Pokemon was a Jirachi. And this was a major issue. It's strong enough to do huge damage to Heltrix's other Pokemon, and not only that, it can heal itself with rest after a long drawn-out fight with Metablue. It took him a long time, a berry juice, and a max potion, but he was able to take it down. Then her second Pokemon was Atropius, who wasn't a big deal. And now it was my turn to fight Jupiter, and mine was a bit easier. After risking Mandoof's life on a confusion, Y-Float was able to come in and just counter against her Pokemon for an easy victory. Just ignore the whole Mandoof situation though. Though you might be thinking the whole run is invalid because of that at this point, and surely I wouldn't be going into this much detail over a failed wild run, right? Well, life comes at you fast, and in our case, it came at the hands of the third gym leader. My Fantino was pretty easy. However, Heltrix made a critical error, which in most situations it would have been perfectly fine. He accidentally overleveled his Bayleaf, meaning he couldn't use it against Fantina. We did have a full team at this point, even though we were kind of breaking the rules to do it, but to be down one Pokemon shouldn't be the end of the world. However, Heltrix got a Kyogre as her ace, and he didn't have any healing items. Bayleaf easily bodies Kyogre to claim the third badge here, but with the inability to switch to Bayleaf, Kyogre proved to be too much, and this 10-minute battle ended in misery, all because of just one accidental rare candy. But the past is the past, move on to the next one. We would only have to endure one more reset though before we get another good run, in which we lost a Regigigas and Numel to a rival battle. But the next attempt would be our last one. Would we prevail or would we suffer heartbreaking defeat? Let's find out. We get some good starters this time, Zapdos and Trapinch, with our rivals getting Electrode and Raichu, neither of which had a move that could hit our Pokemon, but perhaps my decision to give him Electrode would come back to bite us. Our first encounter was Dusclops and Bonsly, who died to a crit, and it would have been actually really good to have this one. Truly unfortunate. Blossom and Graveler was our lake encounter, and we named her Brittany, and she was going to guide our way. After finding an emotional support Dunsparce in Heltrix's catching tutorial, we caught the duo of Teddiursa and Cacturne, named Ronaldo, though Brittany's better, so we never ended up using him. After Heltrix had a minor heart attack on the next rival fight, we go for our next encounters, somehow getting Sceptile Grovyle combo, and since we couldn't use them, reset the encounter to get Gallade and Mamoswine, aptly named Gigachad. Oh yeah baby, this was the run. And this time we also made sure to get the fishing encounter in Twinleaf Town. This gave us a Spheal and Grotle combo named Fred, and this was actually a huge encounter to pick up. Then north of the city we found Dragonite Ursaring, and somehow Blossom killed Dragonite with a quad-resisted crit Mega Drain. Like, you know, you don't have to deal damage to them, technically, but you don't want to waste all your Pokeballs too. And our last relevant encounters before Roark ended up being Skarmory Staraptor named Seth and Weepinbell Surskit. But we also had enough Pokeballs to do the route above Orboro this time, and this time we got the God RNG here. A dynamic duo of Groudon and Raikou. And this time we actually caught both of them. Talk about crazy luck. Did we get a 1 in a million chance or something? Well, no. After the previous run, we decided to use the minimum catch rate feature of the randomizer, because legendary Pokemon are rare enough to get as the encounter already, and what's the point of getting them as the encounter if we can't ever actually use them? And plus it evens the playing field because so many trainers will have legendaries themselves. And you know what? This is my YouTube video. I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And so we took on the first gym with the lineup of Alex, Gigachad, Seth, and Brittany. And even with this star-studded lineup, we did have a bit of a challenge in the first gym. Heltrix had some troubles with a Miltank. The spirit of Whitney is haunting us here for some reason. It raised its defense with Defense Curl, and when it was low, it healed with Milk Drink. It thankfully didn't have Rollout though, so it was just a matter of wearing it down, which was better after a switch to Raikou for special attacks, as well as getting a bit lucky with some Paralysis Cheese. For me though, I couldn't hit an Aerodactyl with Groudon, so I was trying to wear it down with Seth, but it roared out to Brittany, and then it kept flinching her with Bite. And once she could actually attack, Roark switched to Chatot, another Pokemon that Alex couldn't damage yet. Seth was able to take it down, but then the ace, Chimecho, brought out the Confusion Cheese. I switched to Alex to clean that up, then Gigachad gets roared in as I switched to Brittany, and I decided to trust Gigachad against Aerodactyl. With his Confusion and Paralysis Cheese, we were able to take the victory. I feel like the first gym is really that big barrier, where if a lot of teams get past it, then the run can go on for a while. We ended up getting a lot of grass-type encounters in this run, getting Victory Bell and Bonsly for our next one, and unfortunately, at least how we played, Dupe's Claws doesn't apply across each other's games. After that one, I accidentally ran into this double battle battle with a casual Arceus and Snorlax, before finding our next encounter in Ursaring and Latias, which technically we shouldn't have really gone for, but I forgot about Ronaldo the Teddiursa. But it's not the end of the world, because this pairing would see a lot of use where the other one didn't get any use at all. They were named Wendy and Wendy's, and our Valley Windworks encounter would be Scyther and Furret, named Walker. Commander Mars was our next big challenge, and this time she would lead with a Manaphy for Heltrix. Would have been scary if it had Arena Trap, but he was able to switch to Alex, easily taking it down. Onto the forest, where Heltrix would continue his theme of getting sun-focused water types, getting a Gorabus with solar power, whereas I caught a Nidoran female with speed boost. We named them a Goat and added them to the team, and it was time for the second gym. For me, Gardenia had the menacing trio of Remoraid, Goldeen, and Bellsprout, and Heltrix got Bellsprout, Mantike, and Groudon as the ace. It's like he was battling me. Fortunately for Heltrix, he also has Wendy for a legendary, and she was able to step in when Goat was running low on HP. All things considered, a pretty easy second badge. The random hiker outside the Mount Coronet encounter was a bigger challenge, having Suicune for me and Manaphy for Heltrix. Our next big fight was Commander Jupiter, who didn't have much. A Venusaur for Heltrix was kinda scary, but Wendy was able to take care of it with a little bit of trouble. And for one of our next encounters, we got a rather compatible Pokemon. Ninjask, probably good for Pokemon human breeding too. And in Wayward Cave, we get the pair of Drifblim and Marshtomp, who we named Mark. A decent upgrade over Goat, so we added him to the team. At this point, we both happened to have some items randomized into a fossil, which became Donphan and Grimer, though we had several good ground types for this run already. After talking to a crazy guy, we got a Magby and Matang combo. Why does Heltrix keep getting these guys, man? His name is Steve, and this would be the first time we had a full team. But could they withstand the next gym leader, Fantina? After making sure we didn't overlevel any Pokemon, we faced the gym leader that ended our last run. And guess who she had? Yeah, Bayleaf, the Pokemon that was overleveled, killing our last run on this fight. Fantina is the ghost gym leader after all, and the memory of Bayleaf was haunting us. But Fantina was not a big issue this time. Mark the Drifblim easily swept her entire team for me, and Heltrix had a good counter for each of her Pokemon. After this was the rival battle, which Heltrix did while I was in Paint 3D making a better aspect ratio for a poll that Larry won. The main scary thing was Brittany getting frozen, and I could have sworn the whole permanently frozen thing was not in Gen 4, but he was able to heal her up enough to get through the fight. As for me, the rival battle was an easy Fury Cutter sweep with Giga Chad. This allowed us to catch the useless combo of Skorupian Seal, followed by me killing Heltrix's Azelf encounter, followed by us getting another useless pairing of Staravia and Oddish, and another useless combo of Alakazam and Kecleon. Okay, maybe useless is the wrong word here, but unused is correct. And another useless combo of Whismur and Shuppet. Please man, just give us something good. That's 3 consecutive encounters with normal types, and like 5 that we didn't end up using. Just make it stop. And upon making it to the big city, we get the Porygon gift, which turned into something amazing for Heltrix, but not so amazing for me. But with that, it was time for Gym 4. Her first Pokemon was no big deal for both of us, but her second Pokemon for me was a Lugia. And it immediately crit Giga Chad with a super effective Gust, making me have to rethink the strategy of sweeping with Swords Dance. And upon switching to Alex, I would find that this Lugia has super luck. Of any Pokemon in the game, of course it has to be on a legendary. It got a huge hit on Alex with a Hydro Pump. And at these moments there are 2 choices. Either drop all your spaghetti onto the floor, or shove that spaghetti down your throat. And I told myself I was going to deep throat that spaghetti, with Mark coming in to save the day with Ominous Wind. And the final Pokemon, Politoed, used a Perish Song, Swagger, and Sing combo. But without Shadow Tag or Arena Trap, it was no big deal, allowing me to just switch Pokemon for the victory. 4 badges down, marking about the halfway point in the game. This gave us some new encounters, which included PogChamp, the Heracross Nidorina, which we could add to the team, as well as Mona, the Mew and Milotic, and Time to Die, the Dialga and Nosepass. A nice string of encounters after those 3 normal type encounters. Things were shaping up. For the 5th gym, we then decided to bring the team of Alex, Giga Chad, PogChamp, Mark, Time to Die, and Wendy. Heltrix took the time to go evolve Nosepass to Probopass so it would be useful, but then it was time for the gym fight, and my strategy of Swords Dance Gigachad fails again. This time to Xatu, who survives my first Fury Cutter and is using me first to copy my moves, so Gallade took 2 Fury Cutters. Then Politoad came in, and I guess its one attacking move is Bounce, which made my Dialga useless thanks to Paralysis. Alex swaps into a Perish Song, then gets swaggered. Then the AI made an oopsie, using Bounce so it couldn't switch out of the last Perish Song turn. I used Fly from Mark in order to not take damage from that, and one-shot the incoming Cack turn after, but Heltrix would have some bigger issues on this fight. The ace was an Amistar, who knew Mud Shot, which countered his Raikou, and his Raikou still didn't have a good electric type move, by the way. Gigachad was weak to it as well, so he switched into Mark, and he missed a Mud Bomb, and one of the most specific things in Pokemon happened after. Mark was exactly at half HP, and Amistar also knows Brine. I didn't even know this was a thing, so I definitely don't blame Heltrix for this loss, but Brine gets doubled in power when the opponent is half HP or less. Extremely specific, and yes, while Mark would have died to a crit as well, Heltrix was low on actual options, with Nidorina having low base stat total, and every other Pokemon being either half HP or weak to Brine in the first place. And Mark would fall, making him switch to Wendy, who was able to outspeed and take it down with a Thunderbolt. With this loss on the gym, we swapped Mark out for Goat and PogChamp for 69. That way we could still have a full team. But the run has been going pretty good so far, with that being one of our few casualties. Then we were on the road to Celestic Town, and it was pretty uneventful, mainly getting encounters we wouldn't use. And the Cyrus fight was quite uneventful, but it did give us Surf, allowing us to head to the 6th gym badge. We caught the pair of Cresselia and Baltoy in the town, which we surprisingly never used. And then we got some pretty underwhelming encounters before the 6th gym. But once we got inside, the first trainer had Sunny Day Fire Blast Ho-Oh, which gave me a heart attack, nearly killing Alex. Thankfully, both Alex and Dialga knew Ancient Power, being a good move choice. And there was also a Rayquaza in the gym. But then the gym leader was a pushover, didn't even take damage. For me at least, Heltrix did have some matchup troubles. A Cresselia and Glalie took a lot out of Wendy, then Sableye nearly took out Gigachad, but he outsped, allowing us to grab the badge. And next up was Iron Island, and it was extremely scary throughout. We're talking multiple legendaries, multiple pseudo-legendaries, multiple Deoxys, but all of that couldn't hold a candle to Zangoose. Heltrix avoided a double battle on this fight, but he did make a bit of an oopsie, switching Gigachad into a Heracross. To his credit, a peck from Gigachad did one-shot the Heracross, but he took massive, super effective damage from a close combat. With Zangoose being the next Pokemon, he wanted to switch out of there, but unfortunately it knew Pursuit, perhaps the scariest move in all of Nuzlocking. And unfortunately, with Gigachad being gone, we didn't have the typing variety to replace him. Rest in peace, Gigachad, a true hero of this early game. With that loss, we wanted to take out our anger and frustration on Commander Saturn, who for me had some of the wimpiest Pokemon in the game, so it was quite nice relief. But sadly, the same was not true for Heltrix, as Saturn had a Regigigas, and it proved to be the Time to Die for Time to Die. Regigigas had Revenge, a fighting type move that was super effective, but thankfully that was the only casualty to this behemoth. But this caused us to take a good look at what we had in the boxes to give ourselves the best chance at the endgame. So we gathered our crew of Alex, Wendy, Brittany, Mona, and PogChamp, and soldiered on. Commander Mars was a pushover for both of us, meaning we could move northward. And from there, the tragedy only continued. And this time, it was one of our objectively best Pokemon, Alex. And there's really no way to sugarcoat this one. Heltrix fucked up. He did get crit by the Dusknoir here, and between Burn and Hail, he was left on 1 HP. But for some reason, not only did he not try to switch here, but he went for Quick Attack on a Ghost. I asked him why he did this, and he figured it was just because he was tired, which made sense because we were full on degen at this point, having played for 8 hours in the day so far. And we definitely weren't rolling in the healing items at this point, and he took 89 damage on the previous turn. And in his defense, the Dusknoir did use Pursuit here, so it very likely would have been the end of Alex anyway. Things would start to look up from here though, as for one of our encounters, Heltrix found Latios, which would be a good backup in the event Wendy dies. And before you judge us for the name, just remember, Heltrix is Australian. civilian, so it's perfectly fine. And for another encounter, we got War Turtle Agron, a pretty nice pairing, but it would mess with Mona. And all things considered, losing Alex wasn't the biggest deal in the world because now we could use our starter. Trapinch Zapdos is a great combo, especially now that Heltrix could evolve Trapinch and nearly get it to Flygon. But Vibrava still isn't that great, as I would find out in the 7th gym battle. Dugtrio wasn't a threat and neither was Nidoran, but Skarmory was able to stick around long enough to set up 2 layers of spikes and a metal sound on Mew. And Vibrava was able to hit me with a Dragon Breath for a whopping 21 damage. So yeah, Vibrava is pretty trash before Flygon, not gonna lie. Heltrix had a little bit scarier Pokemon, but Brittany and Wendy handled them fine for him. And after an uneventful lake encounter, it was time for the Galactic HQ. We had a couple of close calls inside, but nothing really to worry about until Cyrus himself. For Heltrix, he had a Metagross. Before Brittany was able to Earthquake it, it already set up an Iron Defense, and it went +4 for the next one. But Wendy proved to be tanky enough to take it out with help from healing items. And the fight after with Saturn was also quite scary, but for me instead. Faced with a Magmar, it just barely lived a Surf from Mew, and it was able to use Confuse Ray. And not only did Mona hit itself in Confusion twice, but a Fire Punch got the burn, dropping me to 11 HP. And a crit on one of the Fire Punches would have killed me, all because Surf just barely didn't one-shot. After some healing items we were fine, but that was way closer than it needed to be. With that out of the way though, it was time to head up Spear Pillar. After some cheek-clenching grunt fights, it was time to take on Jupiter and Mars. Their first group of Pokemon was easy, except for me having a Wynot. Don't let its exterior fool you. Wynot is scary. Counter or Mirror Coat, basically a 50% chance to take double damage that you inflict. So I just didn't attack it at all. I let Barry's Pokemon handle that. There's no way I was going to risk hitting that thing. So I focused down the left side first, and aside from a mild heart attack from a Bug Buzz Butterfree, the fight for me was relatively smooth. Heltrix did the same, his scariest opponent being Magmortar, who he was able to counter with Mona. This was followed by a long trek through the Distortion world, as Heltrix and I never made it to this point in Platinum before. As a kid, I just didn't have the attention span to finish the game when it was so similar to Diamond, which I had just finished after it released. And Heltrix only played Fire Red and Pearl as a kid and stopped playing until a friend introduced him to Nuzlocking recently. And he largely just has fun with the aspect of being able to randomize and change the challenge when you play the games each time. And when you randomize, sometimes Cyrus will be one of the hardest battles of a challenge, and other times he will be relatively tame. We got pretty lucky here, most of his Pokemon not being too big of a threat. So with Cyrus done, surely it'd be smooth sailing from here, right? Well, it was, at least until we stepped foot in the 8th gym. Several of the trainers in the gym are mandatory, and if you're not careful, they'll pack a serious punch. The first trainer was easy enough, but the second trainer had Latias for me, but nothing Mona couldn't handle. But the third trainer had a very scary Pokemon. Pineco. I didn't expect the explosion, and I thought I was going to one-shot it here, but even if I did expect the explosion, nothing would have prepared me for it critting. So Wendy was defeated. And what sucks even more is it's possible the crit mattered here. With me having the worst possible IVs, it was guaranteed one shot, but with just 15 in defense and HP, it was guaranteed not to kill. But without a ghost type or a Pokemon with damp, I couldn't have exactly prevented this outcome. I used my strongest move and it just barely didn't kill, and that was that. So before continuing the gym, we replaced Wendy and PogChamp with Kunt and Uranus. That was not intentional. It was our best option. One of the few ways Heltrix could get a legendary on the squad. And come on, Slacking is just a beast. Or at least he would be if he didn't get dropped by a fucking Wynot. Fuck this thing. And not only did that happen, but I also had a lapse in judgment, and it cost us one of our longest standing Pokemon, Brittany. Fury Cutter didn't do a crazy amount of damage, and I figured I could get one Mega Drain in and survive before having to switch to something else, because Mona is weak to Bug and both Zapdos and Butterfree are weak to Rock. But unfortunately I took the death here, and after it was as simple as switching to Zapdos and using Fly. So the 8th gym was quite rough for me, and with those deaths we had to go into the gym leader with Mona, Kunt, Trapdos, Fred the Walrein, and Torterra pairing, and Stinky and Stinkier, the Exploud and Skuntank pairing. Is this team the end of the world? Not really, but scuffed? Absolutely. But it did end up looking like the end of the world when Voltor's first Pokemon was Electrode, a stronger Pokemon with self-destruct, and again, no ghost type or damp. I just had to Psychic and pray that it wouldn't use it, and for some reason he didn't. He actually switched to Starmie, believe it or or not. And this was just weird to me. Can we get an AI analysis from an expert here? I think it had something to do with me using Psychic and Starmie resisting Psychic, but it didn't seem to have a super effective move for me or anything, so I'm really not sure. I swapped to Trap Dose and kill it with Discharge. Then I got Paralysis Cheese on the Lapras that was next, and then he had a Staryu. Bro was actually a Water-type gym leader, but he still did have that Electrode. And admittedly, I was kinda misplaying here, trying to be too safe about this potential self-destruct. But he ended up just using Swift and Magnet Rise, allowing me to squeak through this 8th gym badge. In contrast, Heltrix had a pretty easy time in here. So it was time for Victory Road. At this point in the run, you get very tense, start making mistakes you might not make otherwise. Or in our case, we were going to level cap the rival fight before the Elite Four, so we had to make certain decisions around that. One of those was having to avoid Mona going over level 51 here and being in a fight. But I had a big brain idea. As long as Heltrix switched into every single Pokemon in the party to dilute the experience gain, Mona would not level up. And thankfully the opponent's Pokemon was just a Marill, so it didn't give out that much experience for the win. And that kept Mona available for the rival fight. But this rival fight was going to be hell. For me at least. Heltrix had an easy time with it. Sends out Noctowl first, whatever. Dugong second was sketchy, but I whittled it down with Fret. But after that, he sent in his starter, Electrode, who was high enough level to know Explosion by this point. But once again, there was a switch, this time into Ezel, so I'm thinking the Psychic Resist had something to do with it. And thankfully, Azelf doesn't get Explosion yet. But after taking care of Azelf and Electrode, he had both Anorith and Armaldo, the guy I lost Brittany to. And for some reason, I monkey-brained and was on Mona here, even though the Trapdos Fly strategy was clearly superior before. I realized the error of my ways though, squeaking through the fight with a win. And that means we only had 5 battles left. 26 more Pokemon stood between us and ultimate glory. And at this point, Heltrix and I disagreed about the level cap. Traditionally, you would level cap to Cynthia's strongest Pokemon, maybe a little bit lower given the experience you'd gained before then. But since we were using rare candies, Heltrix said we should do a level cap of each individual member of the Elite Four. But this was only even possible for us to do because we were cheating. And I'll be honest, I kinda wanted the free win at this point. We were 12 hours into the day. But eventually, I reluctantly walked inside, with us level capping to each individual Elite Four member. And of course, the first Pokemon I saw was an Entei. What does Heltrix get? A Cascoon. And for me, Entei wasn't even the worst part of this battle, because there was a Drifblim here. Between the last gym until the Elite Four, I ran into 3 Electrodes, and now I got a Drifblim, and I didn't even remember that it could explode. But you know, life comes at you real fast. At least this was like our worst Pokemon, but losing one this early could easily snowball into something worse. Given that we were at the Elite Four, I finally said, okay, I need to be able to heal outside of battle. So I ended up finding a different cheat code, and this gave me infinite of every healing item, but don't worry, I didn't abuse that. I had like 2 Ethers and 1 Max Elixir, and then 42 full restores, which I made sure not to go through that many for the entire Elite Four. I did this in preparation for the next fight, which didn't even end up being that scary, except when Butterfree was almost OHKO'd by Muck's Gunk Shot. But that was the only scary part of the fight. The next fight with Flint though, oh boy. You might wonder how Heltrix has been doing, and he's just been breezing through every fight, no issues, not even remotely close to losing someone. But me, what do I get? A frickin' slacking in my face. I get a nice paralysis on slacking from a discharge with Zapdos, but it didn't do anything for me though, because slacking survived on 1 HP after the next one and used Flail. And there was no chance Zapdos was surviving that. At this point, I was heated. We should have been level 62, and that slacking would have died to my discharge. But instead, we lost our starter. All to this ugly ass, picking its nose ass monkey. So now I'm left with a Mew, a Walrein, and a fucking Butterfree to finish the Elite Four with. And it's not like I could even use Butterfree as a sacrifice, because that's my partner's Latios. And that wasn't even the end of that fight. Flint also had a Magnezone whose discharge does about 1/3 of Mew's HP every turn, so I had to completely spam full restores to win the fight. And this whole time, I did not get to have a single Elite Four fight that didn't have a scuffed situation in it. For the next fight, Heltrix, again, he blasted through the whole thing, no problem. Me though, on his 4th Pokemon, he had a Tropius. No big deal, right? Fred's an Ice type. But his move is Ice Fang. It has a 15% chance to miss, I think, and he missed. And Tropius used Solar Beam. It is a 2-turn attack, attack cause there's no sunlight, but I wasn't leaving anything to chance. I ran the calculations, and it wasn't going to kill without a crit, so I had to risk another Ice Fang miss and potentially risk a crit from Solar Beam, and Fred wasn't guaranteed to kill unless I had a good attack IV. Unless... Crit! But wait, we're not done just yet. After that, there was also an Execute, who, wouldn't you know, has Solar Beam as well, and somehow Ice Fang is barely a 2-shot on it. And not only that, but it had a berry, which healed it enough to not get 2-shot, so I had to risk another Solar Beam critting. It didn't crit though, and Lucian healed his Execute up after that, allowing me to properly 2-shot it. But like, why does everything have to be so close, man? Like, if I lose Fred there, it was game over. There was no way my Mew was going to solo the champion fight. To this point, never had I felt more anxious than when Cynthia's music started playing. Not only was I counting on 3 Pokemon to be able to carry me to victory on this fight, but Heltrix was counting on me not to make a stupid mistake to cost us the run on the final fight of the game. Because, you know, he literally finished the fight in 2 minutes, no sweat. For him, the champion's team was a Seviper, a Pichu, 2 Pidgeotos, a Staravia, and a Wishcash. Basically as free as you could get. Me though, I had to deal with a Torterra as the second Pokemon, and it has Crunch and Leaf Storm, which should do about the same amount of damage to my Mew, and a high roll crit of either would one-shot Mew from full HP, and Ice Fang was going to be a range to kill it, and a Leaf Storm would absolutely one-shot Walrein. But luckily for me, this Torterra really liked to use Synthesis and Crunch, so when Mew was in some danger after a high roll Crunch, I went for a swap to Fred. It uses Synthesis for full HP. Fred Ice Fangs, it barely doesn't kill. But this is it. I saw the run flash before my eyes. Every Pokemon that led us to this point, only to be let down, because Fred just barely didn't kill this thing. But little did I know that Fred was the chosen one. He got the 10% chance for Leaf Storm to miss. Cynthia then used a full restore, Torterra lived on about 1 HP again, and Fred was able to take it down. But I wasn't out of the woods yet. She then sent in Electivire. I can't keep Fred in here, so I have to swap to Mew. And for some reason, the AI used Screech. And funnily enough, Electivire only has special moves, so she basically wasted the turn. Then I healed, and she wasted another turn, getting a Thunder miss. And it missed Thunder the next turn as well, as I use Psychic. I must have had permanent Bright Powder for this fight or something. I wouldn't get lucky enough to completely avoid it though, as on the second Psychic, Thunder connects, also paralyzing me. And then she gets lucky, as almost every time Thunder did connect, it paralyzed. I kept full restoring to avoid the risk, and when I finally get a miss, Mona takes it down. Then comes in Mantine, for whom I switched to Fred, and on that turn it used Aqua Ring, which made for a great time to use Fred's broken move, Encore. You don't want it to Hydro Pump because even a crit against Fred would be scary, so I encored and whittled it down with Ice Fang as Mantine stares on, helplessly using Aqua Ring until eventually it goes down. Then next up was Vigoroth, who had 3 fighting type moves as well as Slash. I switched to Mew as it goes for counter, getting a free switch, and because Slash was its best move for Mew, it was only ever going to use Slash or counter, so as long as I avoided Drain Punch, the scary times were over, as the final Pokemon on Cynthia's team was a lone Whismur, who Mew Drain Punched for the victory. And with this amazing trio of Pokemon, we beat the champion, and I completed my first Soul Link Nuzlocke. In total, this attempt took about 11 hours start to finish with no major breaks. Thank God we were using rare candies, man. We would have been only about halfway done, and the endgame would have definitely taken an eternity. There were some bumps in the road for sure, but all in all, I felt good about the run, especially considering this was my first Nuzlocke in years. So shout out to Heltrix for asking me to do this with him. We had a great time. And shout out to you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you like the video. It takes you 2 seconds, and it helps out massively with the YouTube algorithm, and it will allow me to do more things just like this. And subscribe to the channel to see those things, and bonus points if you ring the bell. For extra bonus points, you can become a channel member, which will support me directly, and it'll get you some cool perks in my Discord server, link in the description. But that's gonna do it from me. I have been Trevor, I go by Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.